Thank you for joining with me for this meditation today. Go ahead and sit with your back supported, head and neck free. Let's start with a big 4x breath. In through the nose for a count of 4. Hold it at the top and exhale for a count of 8, and then hold it at the bottom. Repeat that 4 times. Go ahead and keep your eyes closed. Lesson 71. Only God's plan for salvation will work. The ego has set up a plan for salvation in opposition to God's. It is this plan in which you believe. Since it is the opposite of God, you also believe that to accept God's plan in place of the ego's is to be damned. This sounds preposterous, of course, yet after we have considered just what the ego's plan is, perhaps you will realize that however preposterous it may be, you do believe in it. And the ego's plan is holding grievances. It maintains that if someone else spoke or acted differently, or something were changed, you would be saved. Thus, the source of salvation is constantly perceived as outside yourself. If this changed, I would feel better. If this were this way, I would feel better. Each grievance you hold is a declaration and an assertion in which you believe that says, if this were different, I would be saved. The change of mind is necessary for salvation, is thus demanded of everyone and everything except yourself. God's plan for salvation works simply because by following His direction you seek for salvation where it is. So we're going to begin this longer practice period by thinking about today's idea and realizing that it contains 2 parts. God's plan for your salvation will work. That's the first part. And other plans will not. That's the second part. Do not allow yourself to become depressed or angry at this second part. It is inherent in the first. And in the first is your full release from all your own insane attempts and mad proposals to free yourself. So the first is God's plan for your salvation will work. When we try to use something else that is not God's plan, we suffer depression and anger. But God's plan will succeed. It will lead to release and joy. Let us devote some of this practice time by asking God to reveal His plan to us. Ask Him very specifically, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? And give God full charge of the rest of this practice period. And let Him tell you what needs to be done by you in His plan for your salvation. He will answer you. Be willing and refuse not to hear. The very fact that you are showing up here and doing this exercise, doing this meditation, proves that you have the willingness to listen. This is enough to establish your claim to God's answer. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? Only God's plan for salvation will work. In the shorter practice periods today, you will tell yourself often that God's plan for salvation and only His will work. Be alert to all temptation to hold grievances today and respond to them with this form of today's idea. Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work. Try to remember today's idea some 6 or 7 times an hour. There could be no better way to spend a half a minute or less to remember than to remember the source of your salvation and to see it where it is. Obviously, this is not a very happy thought for the ego because we still think our plans for salvation will work. To say it again, God does not have a plan. Terms like these are used because they are familiar and easily understood. We must always keep in mind, however, that they are Jesus' symbols of forgiveness to correct the ego's symbols of sin and punishment. In the Bible and in the religions that have sprung from the Bible, God certainly does have a plan. The plan Jesus speaks of here is much different, as we have already seen and will see again in this lesson. Most of us do not think when living our special love and hate relationships, which are all of our relationships, that we are actively choosing against God. That is why Jesus asks in the text that if we knew our special relationships were a triumph over God, would we want them? He is helping us understand that not only do we have a plan to save ourselves from pain, but that this plan directly opposes God. It is helpful to think about the one or the other aspect of our lives for perceiving the situation as it is will enable us to change our minds and make the correct choice. The ego does not want us to find out that we have a mind, for then we would realize we would choose differently, marking the end of the ego and our special self. Jesus is letting us know that this is a process. The fact that we have come this far, are doing the workbook and reading the text, is saying there is a part of us that wants this other way. In the end, our little willingness to listen ensures the happy outcome we are promised. What will speed us along in this process is realizing how much we do not want the ego's way and asking Jesus to help us forgive our fear. The lesson closes, as many of them do, with Jesus urging us to be vigilant as possible for our decision for separation guilt and attack as the defense against returning home to the heart of love. Jesus is asking us continually, even more than every 10 minutes, to compare His plan with the ego's, forgiveness withholding grievances. Thus would we be reminding ourselves of what we really want and how choosing attack and blame merely interferes with the desire to return to our source. So let's choose against the ego's fear and choose for the Holy Spirit's love. And we shall experience the effect of that choice in a form we understand. I love you. Thank you so much for joining with me. I will see you tomorrow. Have a beautiful day.